Hello and welcome back yet again for another awesome episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks. This time we are talking about the reality. But before we talk about what we're going to talk about, I, of course, would be remiss if I didn't talk about my wonderful co-host, the clean-shaven to my graybeard, the Picard to my Kirk, the Transformers to my GoBots, John Pearson. How you doing,
Hey,
John?
doing good. How you doing?
Doing all right.
And I actually shaved today, so yeah, there we go.
See, it's fitting. It's fitting. And I don't know if you're of the right age to remember the epic battle that was Transformers versus GoBots, but I
Oh
started out with the
man,
GoBots because they were the less expensive brother, and that was my world.
yeah, Transformers. I watched a little bit when I was little, so I'm not like a pro in Transformers. I was a my cartoon of choice was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's like the one I watched the most and had action figures of, and I don't know if I had the van. I always wanted the van, and I don't know if I actually had it, but yeah.
Yeah, I always had the GoBots, which was the one that wasn't quite the cool one, and then one year for Christmas I got I don't remember what they were called, but it was the construction toys and the bulldozer and the dump truck, and you put them all together and made a great big transformer, and then I was hooked, and that's clearly how I got into the AECO was construction transformers. That has to be it, right?
Oh man, there you go. And I don't want to dwell on that too long, I guess, but like when I was little, I remember we had these VHS tapes that were like called trucks. That was the name of the VHS tape. It was just trucks, and it was just ditch diggers and all kinds of stuff,
Oh.
digging holes and construction stuff. And it was literally just called, I think, trucks.
No more needed than that. That would be like nowadays the kids just go on YouTube and pick a genre and just sit there and watch videos on loop. That was our loop. The VHS tape that said trucks, handwritten. You throw it in there and you just watch
Yep.
all the fun go.
Oh, it was awesome. I'm gonna have to find it now. Maybe we'll include it in the notes for this episode. Because it's probably on YouTube now, so now I'm gonna be watching that the rest of the day.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll have a spin-off podcast, Wrenches, Gadgets, Hacks, and Things in Mud.
Awesome.
But we got off on a bit of a sidetrack there, which is fine. We encourage sidetracks. But if you've been listening along, and of course you've been listening along, we've been on a vibe code kick. So we had an episode where we talked about what is vibe coding. Then we talked about the good, everything's sunshine and lollipops of vibe coding. Last episode, the bad, sometimes the good isn't always the good. And today we're kind of bringing it all together with the reality. With the good and the bad, there has to be somewhere in the middle. And we've landed in the middle. We're at the reality to learn to use vibe coding for what it is, or at least what it is at the moment, because it's always changing like anything AI. So that's where we are today. We're talking about the reality of vibe coding. So what do you think, John? What is the reality? We're going to skip right to the end and then work our way back through the rest of it.
Yeah, for the reality that I've discovered while vibe coding something. So like that's been a task of mine through this series as well. Is just trying to test out all the different tools, right? So one of the biggest realities or takeaways for me is like you're going to try a lot of tools probably. I mentioned it in another episode. You're going to sign up with your email on a lot of tools and get a lot of emails as well. But once you find one that's working for you, it's really cool, and you kind of like the reality is I get really excited about things and I'll start telling people all about the tool I found too. So it's like that hype thing. I've done that a lot in this whole process, and yeah, it's just been really interesting. The reality too is you are going to spend some money. I've spent maybe $20 total on this app that I'm toying around with, my note taking app, and yeah, I think it's been worth it because any other potential app that I could use for this, some suggest like Notion or anything like that. Trello's another one that I used to use. Those cost like $10 a month anyway. So the reality is sometimes it might cost you money, but it might end up being something you use, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, that is cool, and I think you have to not justify the use, but understand why you're using it. Because,
For
like you
sure.
say, there's going to be frustration, there's going to be excitement, but there's also going to be fun. If you didn't enjoy coding, whether it's vibe coding, low code, no code, or you're one of those smart people that actually knows how to code, if it's not your job, you're doing it because it's a hobby, right? I mean, maybe not the same as mountain biking or some other hobby, but it's like that. So you spend lots of money for that lift ticket to get your mountain bike at top of the hill, or to go skiing, or to go golfing, or whatever it is. So it's just par for the course. Golf, pun intended.
For sure. Yeah, it's been interesting, and like, I don't know. I guess I've kind of gotten to where it's something that I'm actually using quite a bit. I have a bunch of test notes in my note taking app, but I have like 30 notes in there that are various bookmarks and just little things that I've jotted down, and I've been using it. It's like been kind of cool in that way. But yeah, it's, if I wanted this to go beyond this, I think I'd have a whole lot more reality to face as well if I like wanted more than myself using this app, right? Which is kind of interesting. I do see two other like use cases for it. So one of the coolest things for this vibe coding like infrastructure, I guess, is if your code base is really well documented, it's like really easy to do things, which is cool. So I use it quite a bit in work as well. Some of the vibe coding platforms, a cursor is one that we use. And just describing a problem a lot of the time is really cool. The thing there is like if it's through your work, like you're not on the hook for the bill. So you don't know how much some of this stuff costs as well, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, it's interesting messing with all of it for sure.
Well, and I think you bring up a very good point about, using it at work or not at work. I've done it for both. But the idea of describing the problem. And we all know the story of and I don't have one here handy to show you, the rubber duck, the yellow duck that's famous in coding. If you're having a problem, if you're banging your head against the wall for not being able to solve something, you break down the problem like you would explaining it to a duck. There we go.
On Cheeto, a little pig.
Close enough. I think you could, I don't know which one's smarter, the duck or the pig, but you'd still have to explain it to them a little bit easier. But I think that's the same process. And by doing that, if you can't explain the problem at that level, then you don't understand the problem.
Yeah.
And that's going to cause a problem. A lot of problems in that statement. But that's one of the things that when you're working with vibe coding or anything really in the industry is you have to understand the ending to work your way back to the beginning to get a solution that's going to work. And you used to always say that, when you were doing your classes talking about Dynamo, is that you understand how to get there in Revit. You're a Revit expert. You know how to create view templates in Revit. But now I want to automate that with Dynamo. So I know the end, I know the outcome and how to get there, but I'm not sure how to get there in this new workflow. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with vibe coding. If you understand the end, then you just have to work your way back systematically. And if you want to solve a problem that you don't know the end to, it is going to be more difficult. And that leads to frustrations, and it leads to not coming back to doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, that's a question that comes up all the time, like in the Dynamo world, is how do I know how to do this? And I'm like, kind of need to know Revit to be able to dissect the process down. One of the things that I always liked, and I think this example is used everywhere, is like they'll walk you through, you'll have someone else walk you through how to make like a peanut butter sandwich. Mm-hmm. And like everyone's probably done this if you've taken any kind of training classes, but it's always like the person says, take the peanut butter out of the jar. And then like the person following instructions dunks their hand in because they didn't say grab the knife, dip it in the jar, put it on. And like I've always I learned that a long time ago. I saw that example for the first time myself. I was a trainer at a warehouse a long time ago, picking up boxes. And they did that example for us in that training class. And I was like, that's really cool. So yeah, that stuck with me. And it's kind of the same way with these vibe coding platforms. If you tell it to do something, it's probably going to do it based how you said it. So like, I told it something along the lines of the app's I need it to load faster. And it removed all styling from my app. And it was just like text, like an old school website where it's like enter a note, press OK. And it wasn't like nice looking. It loaded a heck of a lot faster. But it was like, let me just strip everything out and like change all of your styling to nothing. So yeah, you just need to kind of describe things very well and follow up. One of the other like realities, right now I'm playing around with a platform called Kilo Code that I'm really excited about because it's been working well. This is on my own personal time. the model that I'm using that they include for free right now, and it's the cheapest model, you can't give image feedback to it. So I can't screenshot my app and say, fix this. And that's like a way that I've grown accustomed to communicating with the vibe coding platforms, is I'll just screenshot it and say, fix this, look at this is wrong. So having an awareness of models you're using is another thing that's normally you don't have to think about as much, but it does help when you're trying to achieve something. I always look at how much tokens cost. I think we talked about this a little bit on the last one. And the model I'm using is like the cheapest amount of tokens. So I'm trying to, so now I have to describe the problem as good as I can textually instead of pasting a screenshot, which has been fun too. But yeah, or I can ask an AI to summarize the bug for me based on the image maybe.
Well, and that's a very clever workaround. When I was back at the AC Acoustics last year's, the 2024 Technical Summit, that was one thing that I learned, was the idea that when you have all these tools, because back then the joy of AI was the fact that you could have it render beautiful images for you, but you could do it in reverse. You could just give it an image and say, describe that. So that would work really well for exactly what you're doing. The other thing about that, and the kudos to Kilo Code, because it makes you sort of get back to that idea of thinking and not taking the easy way out. And it also, because I've got accustomed to that as well, but on the paid platforms, that really eats up your tokens, it makes you reach the end of your time quicker. So you learn very quickly to use them sparingly. Okay, it'll take me a minute to describe this, but it'll be a lot less expensive on the token train if I do that instead of just simply be lazy and copy and paste.
Yep, absolutely. And I found that out yesterday evening. Kilo Codes allows for the usage of Grok Code Fast, I think it's called, for free, but it doesn't do images. So I switched to Grok 4, the model, and I spent $5 like in 2 minutes of my tokens. Luckily I have $30 in that account, that, because they topped you up, they did a match thing. Go look at their website if you guys are interested, who's listening. But spending pennies over a whole day of prompting versus $5 because I pasted 3 screenshots, I was like, oh goodness, that's not the way to do this. So that's been interesting too. But yeah, I tend to offload stuff. So if you have another subscription, I have Gemini through my Google account, I'll go talk it out through Gemini first before I go to the platform that I'm paying money for, a lot of the time, if I'm token based or usage based as well. So that's been another thing that I've realized and learned, which has been kind of interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely, like we talked about, at some point you're going to find that you're going to pick a platform that you're investing in, you're paying whatever the subscription is. They all seem to like $20 a month. And that's where you're going to do your heavy lifting. But there's so many different platforms, and we talked about it last episode, things like U.com, where you can access the same model that you've already used all of your tokens for that day and sort of, get a fresh set of downs on that same platform. And you'll find that different things, like I love Claude for coding, but I like ChatGPT for just emails and editing and writing and stuff like that, because I find that you can give it a system prompt for how you speak, your style, and it gets that much better than Claude. But again, for coding, Claude does exactly what I want, and maybe I've just learned to code the way it wants me to. So maybe maybe it's starting to, but it works for me. So either way, I'm happy with that.
That's interesting. Yeah, having ChatGPT review an email and stuff like that. I cannot remember who told me this or said it. It might have been on the Revit Kids live stream not too long ago, but I might be wrong. Someone said if you're not putting your emails through something right now, almost every time you should be. And it's the same thing with note taking as well. I don't know, love it or hate it, Microsoft Teams. I don't know that I'll ever take notes 100% on my own ever again, because of stuff like AI helping. It's so handy just to be able to say what did so-and-so say, if we were doing notes on this call right now, this podcast, Carl, just being able to go in and be what was that thing Carl said about the GoBots? Instead of reading a whole transcript, watching the whole episode. It's huge. And I think that's a really cool thing too for the vibe coding, to stay kind of on topic, is how did we do ABC in this app? And it's here's the code for that. And if you're truly trying to learn for your own good, it's cool just to like have a conversation to find out more, which is great. I found that interesting. Is like, explain this to me, and then like I don't know JavaScript really, and it's going through and being like, this is what this does, this is what this does, and I'm like, okay. So I'm kind of storing that away for whenever I'm working with that more, you know. Which has been interesting.
That's absolutely true. And the idea is you want to make sure that it understands. So a couple thoughts on that. So the first one that I go with is I always sort of use the AI that I'm going to use for whatever the project to plan the project. So essentially what I do is I sort of start off, I say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want to get out of it. Just in poorly spelt, bad grammar, Carl speak. But then I ask the LLM to say, okay, can you develop a development roadmap to create this? And then it will create that roadmap. And so I use that as the starting point moving forward. And then what I do is at the end of each conversation, I have sort of a set prompt that said, hey, we're starting to get along. I think the chat is getting along. So I want to create a recap of what we did in this session. And then I want you to update the roadmap based on what we've done up to this point, and then build a prompt to start the next session.
Very cool.
And so it does those three things. And the kicker is I have it created as a downloadable markdown file. There's an article, I'll share it, that says by far that's the most readable format for all LLMs. Well, that and
Markdown.
XML, but Markdown's much easier for us to read.
Yeah.
And so that comes back to the whole money thing. It takes way less credits for it to read Markdown, and it takes way less credits for it to make Markdown. And side note, bonus tip, whatever you want to call it, if you're a VS Code user, there is an awesome extension in there that'll let you just right-click on Markdown and turn it into a beautiful PDF in seconds. So, tip of the day, and I'll find it and I'll put it in the notes. What the
very cool. Called. Yeah, I think like just exploring Markdown in general is like a good tip for anyone because it's such like it's a cool formatting language method. I don't know what it's called. Decorator. I'm not sure what.
And the second part, and you mentioned this as well, is if you want to learn. I find that having it explain it and learning is helpful. But the other thing that I find is that if you tell it to explain or do it tutorial style, it also stops it from just doing it. And yes, it's great that first time you do vibe coding to say, hey, make me a landing page for my widget, and it just does it. You're like blown away. But if it does it wrong, that's half of your entitlement for the day that it just blew through and didn't do it right. So I have another little code that I use, and so whenever I'm ready to start coding, I always put this in the comment. I say, okay, I will have the base code open in VS Code, write changes step by step in beginner-friendly way, show the first and last few lines of the code being replaced so that I can locate it, then provide the new code. Use modern, efficient, well-commented code that a beginner could update in 6 days, 6 months, or 6 years.
Holy smokes, that's awesome. That's like a really cool, asking it to annotate the code too. I've gotten lazy to where I like trust that it annotated it, but that's awesome. And I like the, what did you say, 6 days, 6 months?
6 days, 6 months, 6 years.
6 years is a big commitment for sure.
It is, but I was going with the 6s. But I'm lazy as well. I'm as lazy as they come. So I have a Notepad++ with these 3 or 4 things that I use, and I just copy and paste and use them over again. And by like the 40th or 50th session in the program, that's another tip. Make sure that you're using, projects. Make sure you're using projects for these. It starts to remember. I don't have to tell it what to name the markdown files. It automatically sequences them and names them properly. It kind of knows that that's what I'm is. It gives me that same style. But you will also know that it kind of uses cache. It kind of has a memory. It doesn't really, in that you won't always get the same outcome. It doesn't always tell you the code the same way. It doesn't always do that. And I haven't found the magic button to say, this is the perfect way to respond to me. Respond like this every time. Because that isn't a thing yet.
Yeah, I've used some prompt engineering to get responses, so like formatted responses. I used XML for mine, but it was for something that I was playing around with in Dynamo to rename groups. And I was like, given these nodes, what should this group title be? Reply in XML with this format. only. Don't add any other sidebars or complements or or anything. And it was through the API, but it was responding exactly as XML. So that was really nice. And then XML I was able to parse with C# in this case of the tool that I was playing with. But yeah, that one was really interesting. And like you said earlier, Markdown, XML, JSON, LLMs love talking like that, and it'll save you tokens for sure too, which is pretty nuts. But yeah,
I think it was in Medium, but everyone assumes JSON, but JSON is further down the list than you think. So that's why I always use markup. And they, in the article, again, we'll put it in the notes. They sort of explain that. And speaking of notes, there's also a companion blog from the BIMsider, shameless plug, that will be with this as well, where there's a lot of this content we're talking about that'll be there.
awesome. Yeah, and I just shared a link with you too. Thinking about your prompts that you reuse, like I used to use it a lot more, and I forget that I have it installed. It's called Espanso, but it's a text expander tool. So you type in things like hashtag email1, and it replaces the text on your Windows machine with your email. Hashtag email2 will replace it with another email. So it's like a autocorrect kind of thing. And you could put some really big prompts in there, I imagined, where you're like, my documenting code prompt, right? Like do like a exclamation point code prompt, I don't know. And then it would go and replace all that.
That's very cool.
So yeah, that's kind of another just tip is for storing things in that way. It's called it works on Mac too and Windows. I don't think it works on phones. I wish it did, because phones are kind of nice to be able to do those kind of things too. But yeah, I have another kind of like win story for like vibe coding to share, I guess. I guess it ties into reality maybe. I was looking for an animation yesterday to show like a mouse wheel rolling. So like, something that just shows like roll your mouse wheel. Every website that we were finding was a paid animation. It's like, here's an SVG that's animated. Here's a GIF. Here's a video. And I was like, I don't want to pay for an animation or sign up for a subscription to get an animation. Like, come on. So I was like, well, let me try something. So I opened up, in my case, Grok, because that's one that I have access to. And I told it, I need a scrolling wheel animation, an SVG animated repeating. And it's okay, let me try. And then it did it, and I was like, okay, stylize it like this. And I was just iterating, like vibe coding this animation. And then I got to a point where I was happy with it, and I was like, oh, I need to use this in a video editor. And then I told Grok, I was like, okay, make it have a green background. No drop shadow, nothing. I just need a green background of this mouse cursor animation. And it's like, okay, here you go. And I just recorded my screen of this animation with a green background, removed that background in my video editor, and like really easy. And like that was all in a matter of 10 minutes I did that. And like it was like quote free, like if you have these platforms you're paying in some way. But it was really like cool, and it's like I know how to edit SVGs, but like creating an animated SVG from scratch for the web is not something that like I was prepared to do. And it did it for me. It wrote all the code, and it animates, and it looked really nice and modern and clean. And I was just like, making assets for things now is even easier too. It might not be an app I'm using, but like I'm probably going to turn to it for more things. Like if I wanted to add some SVG graphic somewhere on my video, or have some logo in the corner, I don't know. I might try to do that now with just some kind of vibe coding, which is really cool. And then that iterative process, like make it bigger, add a green background so that way I could keyframe it or chroma key it and remove the green, the green screen. It was just like so handy, and it saved me so much searching, because searching, like if you've ever searched for like thumbs up icon, you're going to find like how many different websites, and there's going to be watermarks, or there's going to be ones that are like not what you want, or ones that cost money. So it's like, it's kind of interesting being able to use it for those things. It was super handy for my use case yesterday though.
Well, and I think that comes back to the idea of why vibe coding is a thing, is because you had a specific niche, although maybe not niche, but a use case that you had to do. You could have the conversation, you could do that iterate process, you got what you want, you didn't have to pay any money, you didn't have to, it just worked. And that's the same reason why we did Dynamo, why we do PyRevit, all these different things is because we're prototyping. We need something quickly. We're not going to market and selling a million of these things. I just need something now, and this is how I can get it done.
Yeah.
The flip side to that, though, because that was a win, is you're going to get losses. It's not always going to work like that. And so, that's where the frustration comes in with vibe coding, or whether you're paying for a usage or not, you get to a point where you reach the end of it. And usually in my case is when I reach the end is when I'm one prompt away from finishing. So then I have to wait 5 hours or a day, or sometimes now if you reach your weekly limit, you got to wait days before you can get back in and finish that. And that's where you start to learn about, maybe I could do a little less image prompting, or maybe I can use Markdown or use RAG because I'm saving everything in the project repository so that I can use, caching. So all these things come into place, but all of that is a long-winded way for me to say another tip here is sometimes you have to know when to call it a session to end that, because you're getting that repetitive answer back, or you're not getting what you want, or you feel that you're getting near the end of that chat where, I've heard it's in that 45 to 50 sort of interactions that you start to get less than stellar responses, or you get that it says it did something, but you get that same response over and over again. And the thing to take from that is you've learned something. I think this came back to like what you're talking about with the SVG, is that while you may not have got the outcome you wanted from that interaction, you definitely learned stuff along the way, and now you know what to say. It's like reverse engineering an image to get the prompt. Well, I asked these 3 questions and I didn't get what I wanted, but it gave me these outcomes. So now if I tweak that, you're not losing that time. You learn stuff, but that next prompt is going to be better. And you have to kind of frame it in your mind that way, because then it's like, oh, well, it was a learning, we all learned from this, and now I have better going on.
Yeah. It reminds me of like how it felt to Google things for the first time. Like, probably I'm like dating myself a little bit too, I guess, but like it's no secret that I'm really, really old. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if you remember, you used to be able to text Google, like on your phone, on your Razr phone, your flip phone. You can text like some 5-digit number, and it was Google, and you'd ask it, what's this? What restaurant is this? This. And it would reply with a text message. I'll try to find an article about it to like link it in the notes. But it was like this thing that it was like so cool. But at the time, it wasn't unlimited text messaging back then, So like I was like in middle school or high school. I was in high school, I think, on my parents' phone plan, and we had a limited number of messages. So you'd start texting Google, and you're learning this stuff. You're asking it where this is, what this is. But there's a limit there to where you're like, oh, I'm going to start paying more money for these text messages. That's what some of this reminds me of a little bit still right now, is like where we're at, is there is this like ability to keep going, but sometimes you kind of need to throttle yourself and think like, should I really ask this? Should I really do this? Am I ready to move on to the next chat? But it reminds me of those times for sure. And then like once everyone has the internet in their pocket on their phone, you can just Google anything. Like that's why it's a phrase, Google it, right? But back then it was like you have to be a little more aware of how much you're using it when you were texting it, which was always kind of an interesting thing. It was really fun, but I'm glad that there's no limit like that anymore, right?
Absolutely. And to tie into that, which is cool, I didn't know you could do that, but I'm a few days older than you, John, so getting onto the mobile devices took a little bit longer. I do remember the flip phones though. But with this, the same with sharing, and we've talked about this a lot, the idea of share what you can. So if you're using vibe coding to create cool things and their IP or their work property, whatever, fine. But if there are things that you can create and share, we talked about GitHub and versioning. Always make sure you have a backup, whether it's on GitHub or some other way. If you can, other people can learn from it. Just like doing blog posts and podcasts and YouTube channels and all these things. Vibe coding is no different. It may be quicker and seem like it's not of value, but other people will get things from that. Or, and in the great case, you get something out there and other people start adding to it. You get a PR, a pull request. Things get added to it, stuff gets brought in, and it maybe this simple vibe coding tool becomes something legit.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's one of the really cool things, for sure, is being able to get something that's working.
And this just popped into my head, slightly off topic, but on topic. We always talk about, how AI is going to take our jobs. They're not. But with AI comes a vibe coding. With vibe coding comes what everybody calls AI slop. So code that's done, it should be a prototype, maybe not a thing. But with that, you've also seen the rise of the vibe code cleaner. This is now a job title and a description, and people that maybe don't have a job because AI had laid them off, they now have a job cleaning up all the code the AI is creating. So it's this great big circle where everything's coming back around again. So just to put a little spotlight on that. First it was prompt engineer, and then it was vibe coder. Now it's vibe code cleaner.
Yeah. Now you get to be the cleanup crew. So there'll always be jobs out there for us. Nice. Hopefully it's well documented. Hopefully they used your prompt for the 6 days, 6 months, 6 years.
There you go.
That way when I'm cleaning it up, I know what to read.
I love it. I love it. Which this will be my last one to go along with that. With some of the I've got 5 projects that I've done sort of vibe coding that are up on GitHub, and then I've done about 10 or 12 internally at work. But what I've started to learn is once you get past like 3 or 4, you're into the 20s or 30s or 100 sessions or chats. One of the things I do when I think I'm done, at least version 1, version 2, whatever, is I ask it to go through and review the code as a whole. Because even though you're asking it to comment and make it efficient, you're doing it for that moment in time. And because it doesn't remember that this is the only way I comment or this is the only way I'm efficient, you'll get there'll be things you did when you were debugging that are still in there. You'll get comments done a different way. You'll do all this sort of stuff. So having it review the code as a whole and say, okay, this is how we should clean that up is a good thing. But if you're always asking it to do that on the way through, you'll also find that when you get to that part that nobody likes, the documentation, it's less painful that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good tip as well. Yeah, I've had stuff in the app that I'm playing with. Ask it to fix something, and at least some comment that's like, we did this instead of doing this because we didn't want to do that anymore. That comment makes no sense, like, in the scheme of things for the whole code, Mm-hmm. So having it go back and, clean that is a really good tip. I still have some comments like that in the code. I have it open on my other screen, and I'm like, it's like, yeah, we now load the notes in the background because making you wait sucks, it's just very, very cool.
Awesome. Well, once again, we've blown past that 30 minutes so we should bring this plane in for landing. I seem to like the plane analogy. But before we do, any final thoughts on the world of vibe coding, John?
I think it's a really exciting time and a really exciting world. I think everyone should be taking a look at it, at least exploring. That way they know it's possible. Do I think everyone listening can go out there and make an app and make millions of dollars? No. Some people might. I wouldn't dismiss it as an option, right? I don't want to ever tell anyone that you can't, but yeah, I think it's very worth at least exploring to learn from, and then just using AI for anything that you want to kind of mess with. Don't let AI do everything for you either. Don't go to write an email and then tell it, do all of the email for me. That's always so weird. When I see an email that's so obviously AI, I'm like, why? At least put a little effort. Same thing with these apps. Put some effort, Describe your app really, really well and iterate as much as you can too. So that's one of my takeaways. And then, yeah, I think as we're kind of getting towards the end of this series, I'll start posting screenshots of the tool that I've been building because I've talked about it a lot, just to share some of the iteration and frustration, the good, the bad, the reality, all of it, right, of the app and its whole life.
Absolutely, and that would be super cool. And I think one thing to tag onto that before we sign out is absolutely you have to do some work. But even if it's more to the capacity of having that iterative process, having that discussion, having the AI clean up the code or make the changes or update things, it's no different than celebrities that write a book and have a ghostwriter. The ghostwriter's doing the work, but the ghostwriter didn't have those adventures in Hollywood. So you need both pieces to make that puzzle work. So, and that's the other thing. And there's always one more thing after I say there's one more thing, but this one's key. If you write a LinkedIn post, if you do a podcast, if you have AI help with a podcast, tell people.
Yeah.
There's no shame in it. Let it out there. And because that does two things. One, it normalizes it, but it also means you can't get blowback saying this is AI. There's an M dash. This is AI. I'm like,
Like
yeah,
I
it is.
said.
Did you read the bottom? You obviously didn't read the post.
Yep. I like it. So then I'll start adding stuff like no AI was used if it was all me.
No
Cool.
AI used in this post. I like it. No AI was harmed in the making of this post.
There you go.
And with that, we're going to bring this bird in for a landing. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks, where we explore the tools, the techniques, and time-saving hacks, aka vibe coding, that are shaping the future. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, again, somewhere down here, and stay tuned for more insights into the exciting world of AECO and technology. Hint, hint, hackathons next. Until next time, keep building, innovating, and exploring the possibilities.